morning, and we will. Thank you. So welcome everyone to the first of 4 educational sessions for Thinking Money for Kids program kits. Our session today is titled Preparing for Our Financial Futures in Libraries. I think it's going to be really excellent, and we're so glad to have such a good turnout here today. I'm Sarah Ostman. I'm Deputy Director of the ALA Public Programs Office. And I also want to call out my 2 fantastic colleagues who many of you have been emailing with and getting to know, Megan Gieseker and Emil Madrigal. They are fabulous and they are making this all run behind the scenes, so thank you. Next slide, please. Just a few quick housekeeping items. You may have noticed that your microphone is muted. That is intentional. We ask that you keep your mic muted for now. You will be invited to come off mute and participate during the breakout sessions and later during some questions. If you have questions for the presenter or for ALA staff, please use the Q&A feature. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. If there is not an icon visible at the bottom of your screen, you may have to look under More, and you will find it there. If you have questions for the presenter, please enter them in the Q&A. If she is unable to answer them during the course of her presentation, we will make a note of it and bring it up later, time permitting. And finally, as you have all been doing such a stellar job at already, please use the chat feature to talk to your fellow attendees. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself there now. Next slide, please. So here's our agenda. We have a lot to get through. We're going to start with a presentation by Kim Holder of the Center for Economic Education at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. We will have some time for questions with Kim. Then we will move into a Mentimeter activity. If you have your phone handy, that may come in handy for that. We'll go into some breakout groups to give you all a chance to chat and get to know each other a bit. And then we'll come back to this main room and do a share out. Today's presenter is Kim Holder, and we are so glad that she is able to be here with us today. Kim is the Managing Director at the Center for Economic Education at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Kim's work helps educators, students, and the community master personal finance skills in innovative and creative ways. She consistently builds bridges that connect resources with people in need in order to advance economics education. She is nationally recognized, award-winning educator, known for her work both in the college classroom and in the community. And we think all of the Thinking Money for Kids participating libraries will get a lot out of Kim's presentation today. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kim, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me okay? Are we good? Wonderful. I'm really excited to be here. Libraries played a huge role in my life. I was a big reader. I was always at the library. And then I took my kids. We did story time and all the summer reading programs. And so it's a real privilege just to be here with, in my opinion, the people who make the world go round. You know, we know that reading is essential, that access to books is a very big part of our lives. And to be here not only with the library system, but also with our FINRA Foundation friends. It's really meaningful that so many people care about financial literacy. I love seeing the poll and seeing that there's only a few people who are scared. And if you're in that category, it's okay. That's what I'm here for you today. There are some people who would like to offer financial literacy programming, but just haven't. And that's part of the purpose of this program, is to help you get started and get you there and get you over whatever is holding you back. So we're going to have 4 of these total. I'm here with you today. And later, we're going to focus a lot on the actual children's programming. But today is really for you. And it's really to help you get started on the right track, to answer any questions that you have, and to build a bit of your own confidence up to make sure that you're ready to go and you're ready to help meet the needs of the people. I am going to encourage you over and over again to engage in the chat. You can put questions in the chat. You can put things in the Q&A. If there's something that's really pressing and you need to get my attention, you can use the raise hand feature under the react button that's on the bottom of your screen. You're not going to distract me. I want to make sure that in this large setting with lots of people that you really feel heard and are ready to engage. So if you have something, then I'll either work it in and answer the question on the fly, or we'll save it to the end. But if you're like me, if I don't go ahead and type it in, I'm going to forget it by the time we get to the end. So I want to make sure that you're here with me and here in the moment with me. So we titled this Our Financial Futures because really we're all kind of in this together. And I know that feels like a really trite saying, particularly after, all the things that we've been through over the last few years. But it truly does take us all to kind of move financial wellness forward, not only for ourselves as individuals or for young children, but also for the community as a whole. And so we're really going to kind of build out these pieces together. I'm going to cover 3 big things for you today: why we need to prepare for our financial future, also some strategies that I've picked up over the last 15 years teaching economics and personal finance, both in the college higher education space. So 18 to 20-year-olds, they're going to ask the stupid questions, and they're not going to be shy about it, as well as doing a lot of community-based financial literacy. So dealing with young children, older children, parents, the community at large, and other educators. And so I do have a few strategies that have helped me through the years, as well as explaining the financial ecosystem to you and how information is going to flow not only from the kids to their parents, but back. And I think it's important to see how you fit into this ecosystem. So again, today we're focusing on you. And part of the reason why we're focusing on you is it's really important to, just like when you're in the plane and they tell you that in case of an emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first. You need to do that in terms of your approach to financial wellness. It doesn't mean that you have to have your financial life together to be able to talk with other people about their finances. You just have to acknowledge that you probably need some help too. You're probably not perfect in your financial life. I'm not perfect in my financial life, but I do need to kind of absorb some of the tools so that then I can more appropriately share them with the right people at the right time. So I really want to help support and empower you to be able to go out into your community. So we have to start here first. So I'd love for you to engage in the chat with me for just a second and tell me, when you think about the word finances, what does it mean to you? Or when I say something like, this is our shared financial future, how do you feel about it? There's probably some kind of gut feeling when we talk about finances, when we talk about money, or when you signed up for this, that immediately pops into your head. Absolutely. I see stress, anxiety, discomfort, savings, bills, difficulty. And these are common. I don't have a magic ball, but I could have written these down and it would have been exactly these same things. That this idea of trying to figure out what to do, it can feel overwhelming. And so sometimes it's so overwhelming that people just don't talk about it at all. And a lot of what you're going to be doing is helping open people up or helping facilitate when they finally do come to a trusted place to get information, which is what libraries are. They're a place that we know helps vet information for us, that they're finally going to come to you and say, I need a little bit of help here. And you're going to tell them, yeah, that's great. It's okay. Everybody asks about this kind of stuff. It's just this assurance at the very beginning that they're not crazy, that they're not strange, that they're not abnormal, that this idea of worry and stress and debt and planning and safety and security, all those things that pop up in us when we think about personal finance, that these are very normal things. And guess what? We have some things for you. We have some resources for you. So it's really, really important that we all kind of think about ourselves as these financial role models, because people are always going to look at us and what we're doing. They're looking at us from our business standpoint. They're looking at us in our personal life, even if we don't think they are. And particularly those of you who work with kids know those kids are always looking. They're always picking up on things that you didn't realize that you were signaling. And so we want to be a bit aware of that. I have two children. They're both grown now. But those conversations start early, and you realize that they're picking up on the things that you're saying and the books that you're reading to them and the activities that you're doing with them, but they're also picking up on the unspoken things that are happening as well. So, all to say that at the end of the day, it's all very complicated. It doesn't mean that it's not doable, but we do have to acknowledge that our feelings about money complicate our ability to learn about money. So there's a whole world called behavioral finance that looks into how people feel, how our bodies react to money, why people behave the way they do about money. We're not going to go all into that, but I do think it's important for you to understand that just talking about money is going to be complicated. I often say, I teach economics and I also teach personal finance, and I say the personal part of personal finance is really important, that it's very, very personal. It's very intimate. It's something that people don't share with a lot of other people. And that can be really difficult for a lot of people. Oh, I see that people are using Excel to manage their finances. That's a great, fantastic tool. I also think that if you're really going to have an impact in your community, you have to kind of dial in why you're doing what you're doing. I know you're on here because you have to be, and you have to attend some of these sessions, but you're also here because on some level you're really interested and you picked this session versus some of the later sessions. And so it'd be good for you to always come back to, why am I doing this? And the reason's going to be different for everybody, and none of them are right or wrong. You might be doing this because you're trying to put food on the table for your family, and it's part of your job. That's perfectly fine. You might be doing this because you have a lot of money. Maybe you're independently wealthy and you just love the library, and so you spend some time there. But your finances are in order, but you want to share that with other people. Or you could be like me. I grew up in poverty, and so it was really important for me to figure out how to, what tools I could use to work myself out of where I found myself and where I wanted to be. So my why is always going to come back to this idea of, I know where I came from. So this is a picture. I was born in South Korea. And this is a picture of one of my foster homes that I was in. And when I put in the alternative text for accessibility reasons, what it popped up was um, a, a picture of a slum. And it's a place that's held together with like pieces of tin. There's dirt floors. I have some other pictures. There's like chickens walking around. This is an impoverished place in the 1970s. It wasn't what it is today. It had just come out of the Korean War not too long ago. And this is where I started. And now, I live in the US. I have, a roof over my head. I have, food on the table and a fridge stocked full of food. And it's a complete 180. And a lot of that is due to luck of the draw. But I was actually adopted by a very, very poor family. My husband and I lived with our two children under the poverty line in the state of Georgia. And it was really difficult. So it wasn't overnight, but I share that piece with you because I think it's really important when I'm going to tell you some of these tips of how to understand your finances, that you understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not coming from, oh, this is easy, everybody should be able to do it, and it's no big deal. these are lessons kind of learned the hard way, and I want to make sure that they ring true for you. It doesn't matter what your why is, but it is really helpful for you to identify it. And then as people come in and talk with you about things, for as much as you're willing to share with them, to help them figure out their why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to learn about budgeting? Because maybe you don't know how to use Excel, but you want to, and maybe it's worth it to you because your why is about, helping your children or the next generation. That's fine. That can be a motivating factor for you. And then you might wonder what economics has to do with it all. Well, econ is actually the science of choice, or the study of choices made under some constraint. So we have some limit on things, and we have to decide what things we're going to do and what things we're not going to do. And so personal finance is just an application of economics. And so that's why it goes nicely with the field that I study. And then you might also wonder why libraries are involved in something like this. I already mentioned to you that you're a trusted place. You're a place that people come to. Could they come and take my personal finance course at a university? Absolutely. But that's an intimidating step. You have to apply. You have to, have the money to spend on it. A library is a very welcoming place. It's a place that's available to the community at large. And it's a place that's known for connecting people with information. It might be books, it might be computers and the internet, it could be programming, but it is part of your, overall reputation, and that's why it makes sense to use libraries. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing your why. I love that. Feel free, if you have your why and you kind of know and you've dialed it in, I'd love to see it in the chat there too. My last little warning for you is to say that it's also okay to say no. So I have a lot of people who come to me and they're like, I'm really not qualified to be giving financial advice. I'm really nervous about it. It's okay to not give financial advice. In fact, you really shouldn't be giving financial advice. What you're doing is connecting people with information. You're not telling them what stocks to buy. You're not telling them what to do with their money. What you're trying to do is give them access to information that maybe they didn't have from their own parents or their own education. Maybe they went to a school where financial literacy wasn't stressed. And so you're just giving them access. And so it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, but let's try to figure it out. Let's go on this little hunt to try to find the information together. That's perfectly fine. So don't feel like you have to have all the answers out of the gate. This is the ecosystem that I was talking about. And I feel certain, Sarah, that you will distribute the slides to them later. But this is something that it's nice to kind of sit and study, and we don't have enough time to go all the way through it. But y'all are really knowledge influencers. You're offering information, you're offering access to books and programming and other information. And in this case, we're offering information about financial knowledge and skills to children. Sorry, hold on. There we go. And then you're also part of this social materials and support that's over on the right-hand side, because you have all of these materials that have been shipped to you in the kits, as well as things that are already exist in your library that people have access to. So you're also delivering these supporting materials that people use. And you're also part of the foundational factors, the part on the bottom. You're part of families and communities and helping people with their general skills and competencies. And so that's part of why the library is such an essential piece, because you actually touch on all of these, where there's lots of spaces that don't touch on all of these. And you're right. Doris said in the chat that living in a poor community, the programming will help the kids. I also live in a very poor community in a town of about 10,000 people. And the conversations that we have are very different than the conversations that are happening in downtown Atlanta or in the suburbs of Atlanta, where it's fairly wealthy. These are different conversations. And so You really have to go down to the community level to have that community or regional impact, because the conversations that you're going to have I saw somebody was here like from Kentucky, are different from the conversations that you're going to have in Wisconsin or Michigan or Cape Cod, right? So that's why you're the expert. All right, so keep going. And if you have general programming questions, I saw one in the Q&A already that's been answered. So if you have like a kit question or something, you can also pop that in either into the chat or the Q&A, and we have other people here who can also take care of it. I want to give you a few stats. As an economist, I don't want to bore you with a bunch of graphs and math, so I have dialed it way back, and I'll just tell you a couple little snippets of fun or unfun facts that I want you to be aware of when you're thinking about sharing and talking about personal finance. The first is because as a woman, and a lot of librarians are women, you should know that women have kind of a unique relationship with money. Often they are either the person in their household who is in charge of the money, or they are left out of the conversation altogether. They are very risk averse, just as a whole. And so their problem on the investing side of things is that they don't take enough risk. They sit on the money, they're nervous, they don't know what they should do. But the thing is that statistically, women live longer lives on average than our male counterparts. We're often paid less, about 80 some cents on the dollar. And we experience what's called the broken rung, where we have to leave the workforce for various reasons. We're often the caregivers of our elder parents, or we have children at home, or our spouse moves and we need to move with them, those sorts of things. And so we often opt out of the labor force at some point in time. All of those things are reasons why we really need to get a hold of our own finances and teach our children how to get a hold of their finances, because it's going to impact us more if we're risk averse and then we're living longer and we're kind of left holding the financial reins solo down the road. A lot of this goes back to, how do you feel about money? What is society telling you that you should do with your money, particularly as a woman? The other thing that we know, and we actually know this through FINRA's financial capability study, which they do nationally, is we know that people don't have a good understanding of the fundamentals. So when you're sitting and tasked with, hey, I need to do financial wellness at my library, you might think that you need to tell people about how to deal with stocks and bonds and index funds and complicated things. It's not true. Really, what you need to tell them is something pretty simple, which is that you can't have all your eggs in one basket. That's an easy financial lesson that we already know. We all grew up with that saying. We all already know it. But most people tend to answer this question, which is diversification, incorrectly, because they think that since they don't know about all the different types of stocks that exist, then they should just put it in one that they know. Well, if you only invest in one stock, that's actually not great behavior. It's kind of risky, because anything could happen to that one stock. And every financial wellness book that you're going to read is going to talk with you about diversification. But that sounds like a really complicated word. But for us, we can translate it into, don't put all your eggs in one basket. This is something that a child can understand, that I'm not going to do everything in this one lane. It's not going to be my only career. I'm going to kind of spread myself out. This is something that we kind of already do intuitively, but gets lost in the translation as we get a little bit older. Let's see. Okay, I see the question in the Q&A, but I'll answer that one at the end. We also know that education plays a huge role, and so you can track net worth by education level. It differs depending on how much education you have, and so libraries are a place where you can encourage other ways to get access to education. Not everybody is going to graduate from high school, at least in my neck of the woods, but They might need a place to study. They might need a place to access other information. What's true both on the net worth side of things, which is how much you own after you take away the things that you owe, is also this idea of debt. Education can come with debt. It also differs by the types of degrees that you have. And so just having that little bit of knowledge of education can be good, but it can also come with debt. And so how do we make good choices? Now, I have a question for you that I'd love for you to answer in the chat for me, which is the average personal savings rate in the United States. I know you're on your computer, so don't look it up. No Google, no AI. What is the average personal savings rate in the United States? And I have pulled the information from the July 2024. So this is a rate, so it's going to be a percentage. I've got 1% out there. Anybody have any other ideas? Now, let's stop and think for a second. If you're working with your own child, or if you're working with, someone and they want to know how much they should save, you're probably going to tell them a little bit higher number than 1%. Would you agree? Yeah. So we know that there's a recommendation of this range of 10 to 15%. And we hit it during COVID. So during COVID, we were up in that 6, 7, even 9% range of personal savings rate. But generally speaking, we hover in this like 1, 2 to 3% rate. So that's average. That means there's some people who are less than 1 or 2% of savings, and there's some people who are more. But on average, most people are at, right now it's at 2.9% as of July 2024. So 10 to 15% is recommended. 15 cents out of every dollar you should be putting away. If you get $100, you should take $15 and put it into a savings account, because you never know what's coming. But what we saw during COVID, particularly, is people didn't have an emergency fund. They didn't have a savings cushion. And it's particularly hard for people who are living paycheck to paycheck. It's not something to get on to someone about, but it's something to use as a guideline of where do we need to be? Am I average? Am I below average in my savings rate? Am I above average? Because if you continue to do kind of average things, you're going to get average results. And if you really want to get a hold of your financial life, you're probably going to have to do more than the average person in this area. The other thing I want to point out is what I like to think of as our money personality. So as I started out at the very beginning, that everyone has these feelings about money, this kind of emotional piece about money. Also, people have some behaviors that they generally engage in. And so when we think about our money personality, I know for myself that I'm a spender. I enjoy spending money. Not really on myself. I like to give gifts to other people. It's kind of like my love language, I would say. I just enjoy it. And in particular, I enjoy figuring out like, what does someone need? What's a problem they have? And how could, I help solve it? Maybe they just need this little widget over here that I could purchase for them, and it would solve things for them. Both of my children, who, as I said, are now grown, they also have their own unique money personalities. So they were raised in the same family. Both my husband and I are in kind of economics and finance adjacent style jobs. And we raised them the same way. We had lots of conversations with them about money, and yet their approach is completely like worlds apart. One is a saver, one is more of a spender, and they just arrived to us that way. And one is, if I talk with them about, what they want for Christmas, they're going to send me a list with links. It's ready to go because they've had it since July. They're ready to go. And the other one says, I don't really care. I kind of have everything I want. I'd rather just save the money. Can you put it into my savings account? I can't explain what happened. I wish I knew, because I bottle it and sell it to people. But it is important to kind of identify what is my feeling about money, what is my why that motivates me to do the things that are difficult that I need to do, as well as what is my general behavior with money. If I get $100, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to spend it? Am I going to save it? Am I going to think about it for a while? If you can dial that in or help other people, including young children, think about that a little bit, then you've started to learn your own money personality. If you do what everyone else does, then you're going to get what everybody else gets. And this is a really simple statement. You know, you've probably seen it on signs before, but it's true. And when I think about this as I apply it to the library space, then what could we do in our spaces that are more conducive to bringing people in to learn about personal finance? So most libraries I've been to in a more traditional sense have things separated by subject. If I want to learn about finance, I'm going to go to a certain area of the library. Well, that might be a bit intimidating for me. I might not know where that section is. It could be a little bit overwhelming, and it also could be a bit stigmatizing. It might be, I don't want people to know that I don't know stuff about finance. So I don't want to go to that area where someone might see me, particularly if you're like me and you live in a small town where like everybody's in everybody's business and everyone sees you. I don't want to go to that area because they might think that, you know, I have a problem. I think one really simple strategy, just low-hanging fruit, is to put personal finance books, materials, and things that you have access to in different places across your library. Put some things in the children's section so that when a parent's there with their kids, they have something that they could look at too. Put things on the end in an easy access place. Think about how personal finance complements lots of different areas. I know that I think March is like Women's History or Women's Awareness Month. And so you could do things about finances for women. February is Black History Month. You could find some things either specifically for that population or by authors of that population. I've seen some people throw Dave Ramsey's books in the chat. Another alternative, particularly if you're doing like Black History Month, would be John Hope Bryant's work, because he deals with the Black and other minority populations, specifically on personal finance and entrepreneurship. So that part's really important. So just finding and driving and creating a space for people to talk about personal finance, people to talk about their financial life, but in a non-threatening way. That to me is something that that libraries can do, and they can do relatively easily. So Jessica says that they do these monthly book displays. So you have this children's corner. You could pair things like Berenstain Bears has a lot, things like there's a series of lemonade stand books, things that are children, as well as maybe partnering that with a book on entrepreneurship, starting your own business, which you have to have a solid financial foundation to do that. Put that there too. So it's not just about the child being encouraged to get their financial life together, but also the parent at the same time. So they're complementary. Now, the first step that I think that you can do today to emphasize with both yourself, because you're still putting your oxygen mask on first, as well as with your patrons that come, is to emphasize one simple tool, which is self-control. At the end of the day, personal finance is a lot about self-control. The simple lesson about personal finance is you have to spend less than you're taking in. You can't overspend. You have a certain amount of money that's coming in, and you have a certain amount of money that's going out, and they have to balance. And if you're spending too much and you're not taking in enough money, then you're going to be at a deficit. And if you're bringing in a lot of money and not spending that much, you're going to end up with this surplus where you're building wealth for yourselves and your family. I don't really care what you spend your money on, but I do care that you're able to take care of your own finances. And so that means that since you have this equation that has to balance, if you're out of balance, there's really only two choices, which is to control the spending or increase your income. Take on a second job, take on a part-time job, change jobs, find other ways to boost your income. Those are the two pieces. So that again is something that a family, a child, a young adult, they can all understand. It's not complicated, whereas they might get intimidated by, a stack of books, or, oh, you have to put it in this particular spreadsheet. So that I just want to make sure that you understand. They have done study after study on this, putting things in front of children and seeing if they will wait to eat the Oreos and things like that, that are all tied into this personal finance space. I see some questions coming through. Yes, I can give you some good financial books. I can put that together, Sarah, and send that to you to distribute. Just because I've been teaching, and I normally teach out of just a collection of books instead of a textbook. So what are things that I think are important for you to share with people? I think you should share with them this idea of the power of compounding. You've probably heard this before, but you only have to put away like this much money to have a lot of money in the future. Just like debt compounds, your savings also compound, and it's called exponential growth. It's a little complicated, but basically your money is going to work for you. And so if you can start young, even if you have very tiny bits of money, like a child, and you just don't touch it, you're going to have a lot of money in the future. The other thing that I want to emphasize is this idea of storytelling. So we can get to our questions. This idea of storytelling is important because if you're dealing in a community, my prior university, a large minority population, about a 50-50 minority population, and about a 50% of students were on Pell Grant, which means that they were very, very poor at the federal level. And what I had to learn is that people are not going to share some of their financial struggles with me because it's embarrassing, because there's stigma attached to it. But what I found is that storytelling, finding a story where the person struggled, or finding something that they could connect to, where they didn't have to talk about themselves, but they could talk about the person in the story, was much more helpful to kind of get them to where we needed to be able to talk about it. And so if you can use this as a tool, particularly in impoverished areas, to make sure that that you're able to talk with them, but it's kind of a roundabout way to do it, particularly if you're not in that same struggle, or if you don't have experience in it. That is super helpful. So let's get to, I want to see if there's any other urgent questions. I see some in the chat. The first is, why do I think financial literacy is not taught in most school education systems? In part because you can't teach everything. You have to have room for the math and reading and writing and science. It's all about choices. So if I include financial literacy, what am I going to get rid of? I actually learned my first financial literacy pieces in a consumer math class. And so it can be integrated across the curriculum. It can be part of reading. And then many states are actually adopting it. And then I already addressed that. I will send some good books to you. So keep putting questions in the chat. I want to walk you through a couple of things. Here's what we're going to do. So we'll have to all do this together. It's hard to grab 150 people all at the same time to do this together. I am going to show you the QR code for Mentimeter, and we're also going to put the link in the chat. If you have an external device, you can use that to grab the QR code. Or if you want to just follow the link in the chat and you have multiple screens or whatever, you can play around with it however you want. And we're going to do 4 questions really quickly, and we're going to go into our breakout rooms. I would like you to answer your questions yourself first and not just talk about them. Okay? And yes, Dominique, I also needed this when I was younger. But you know what? The best time was like way back then, and the second best time is right now. Today is a new day. So get your QR code. I'm going to run through these really quickly because I have 11:42 send to breakout rooms. And so I know I'm a minute behind. So here we go. The first question should be that you should see on your screen is what stood out to you from my presentation? And these answers are not going to be tied to you. I'm not going to come and find you and say, you didn't say something positive. What stood out to you? What jumped to the forefront? You don't have to write 5 sentences, just, a little blurb and a commit to the information. Thank you for putting that up. Again, the link is already in the chat for you to use if you want to follow the link instead. The second question, and we're going to share these out in our breakout rooms too. So you're going to talk with people. I just want you to kind of see what people are saying, but go ahead and get your answers in. The second question is, what are you most excited about? So now that you've had a little time to think about it, that's what's happening as we think about it collectively. We're all here together, thinking at the same time, putting our brains together. What are you most excited about? What's next? Perfect. Yeah. Hints from others. That's what we're getting ready to do. Perfect. Wonderful. And then our third question is, what areas do you need help with? None of us can do it all. Econ theory talks with us a lot about this idea of specialization. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel. If somebody has used something and it makes sense, then you might want to try it too. That's what businesses do. Businesses come and fail and come again. And you know what? By the time they're actually successful, it's probably something that somebody else already did 15 times and failed. You just happen to be number 16 and it takes off for you. So this is, what do you need help with? You're identifying so that you know what you need help with. And then the last question is, what are some things you plan to do to get kids and families engaged? Now, our next thing, and Sarah's going to tell us about it, is we are going to go into our breakout rooms and she's going to tell us exactly how that works. And then we're all going to come back together and share out a little bit. And I'm going to stay on to continue to answer questions. All right, Sarah?
Thanks, Kim. I'm loving seeing these answers come in. By the way, we are going to save these Mentimeter documents and you can all have access to them so you can spend some time seeing what all of your peers said. Like Kim said, we are going to move into breakouts right now to give you a chance to discuss the answers that you submitted and the answers that you were just seeing on the screen. First, we are going to stop the recording.